Alright, so today we're going to be installing some beautiful VITIVON machined aluminum upgrades on our LOSI LASERNUT. This truck has some issues right out of the box, unfortunately. I found that out on the first drive. So I figured anything worth buying is worth overbuying. Now this stuff is not cheap at all. It's pretty much only able to be gotten on eBay, and it comes right from China. Takes about 2 weeks to get, and to me here in the Northeast. And let's go ahead and get them installed. So the first thing we're going to do are the steel CVDs. Now these are much heavier duty than what you get with the stock truck. You could see they're tapered a little bit there at the end, and just look how thick that axle is. It's super heavy duty. And there's the 12 mil hex that comes with it. You can see just the quality of this stuff is excellent. I went with the red anodized stuff to match the body. The next part we'll install are the steering knuckles here. And if you do get the CVDs, you actually have to buy both the hubs for the rear and the steering knuckle because they use larger bearings. And that's one of the main reasons probably to upgrade to this. Bigger bearing means stronger bearing. But just look how beautiful that stuff is. It's all very nicely precision made. Here's your rear hubs. You can see have the bearings. They come pre-installed, and there's actually a few other tuning options on that hub in the back. So you can adjust the roll center and the length of your camber links if you wanted to do that. Some people might not ever get into tuning their car to that level, but you get 2 more options on the VITIVON stuff. And just taking a look at this stuff, you can tell it's really nice quality. I did end up buying this rear diff housing. Take a look at how nicely that thing is machined. One of the main issues with this truck is the rear bearing on the front bearing on this housing ends up going bad. And again, they use a larger bearing on that specific part, and you can see the difference here. So the bottom one is what comes with the VITIVON, and the top one is the stock one. Also went ahead and invested in the steering rack, which uses bearings instead of bushings. You could see the bearings in there, right there. Very nice, all machined aluminum, super duper high quality stuff. Again, guys, not cheap. This is probably some of the more expensive stuff you can buy. Not outrageous, but certainly not cheap. And but I always buy the good stuff. So next part I got is the tower brace. This is a part that commonly does break on the LASERNUT. Simple part, but looks great. And I'm just basically replacing the stuff that I know has the potential to break before it does. I want this truck to be bulletproof. I want to take it out, drive it, and not have to worry about something breaking. Now, obviously not a guarantee, but you never know. Also, with the kit, you get some nice stickers. That's always a little, something I appreciate. I'll be using them on maybe my body panels I do. And bam, going straight in. I'm going to do the hardest part first here, and that is, well, maybe not the hardest, but the most complicated, and that is the install of that rear diff case. So you got to take some screws out, little fast motion action here, keeping it all organized, keeping it clean. Put that rear clip aside, putting the screws back in there. There's my little homemade resin chassis protector that I made. And we're going to pull that stock housing out and compare it to the new one. So you can see here, same shape. There's a lot of things that have to be perfect for this to fit in there. And obviously the aluminum one is not much heavier, but much stronger with that bigger bearing. Just kind of cleaning off some of the dust here before I install, well, most of it. So left a little bit in there, unfortunately. But here's a closer look at our stock case. And here's our new one. It does come with 2 removable bearing inserts there, which is kind of the way the LOSI comes stock. I don't know if you can use those red bearing inserts in the stock case, But I noticed a little bit of flashing on some of those parts. But all in all, these parts are machined extremely well. And we're going to pop open our stock case and take out our diff. So here's your rear diff. You can see that it does come with, I think, 2 or 3 shims on the one side of the diff to get the to get it to be tight. And I did have to experiment with this. I knew this was going to be a little tough because I wasn't sure how many of those spacers I would need to get it to work. Here I'm taking off the outdrive. The first part of installing this new diff is to take off the inner pinion there. There's a stock bearing coming off. There are a couple other spacers in there that go between that. I did include them on the new case. There's no instructions at all that come with these parts, by the way. You have to figure it out. I don't know of any videos that they have. It's kind of a small company, and here you can see the difference between the stock metal shielded bearing there on the right and the new one. Of course, putting a little bit of grease on the inside there just to help the bearing slide into its home. You don't want to overdo that, that's for sure. You certainly don't want any grease on the outside of your case. The grease is just a dirt magnet, but I like to just put a little coating on there. Boom, slips right into place. Very nice. Coating the inner bearing with a little bit of grease, and off camera there. Here we go. Pop it right into place. Perfect. Should be tight. When you put that bearing in, it should be tight. You definitely don't want any play at all. Sliding those little spacers back onto the pinion gear. Reinstalling it. Whoop! Don't reinstall it yet. Putting a little bit of super high quality grease on there. You want to grease all that stuff up, give it a good coating. A medium amount. You don't want it to be completely slathered, but you definitely want all the surfaces covered in grease. Should slide right back in. And we're going to put the outdrive right back on there. Also, try to keep this clean. You don't want that covered in grease. A little bit of Loctite on that screw that holds the outdrive onto the pinion gear. Very important. This is the type of thing that when it heats up, it likes to pop out of there. So make sure you use Loctite on your screws that go into aluminum. Very, very important. So just giving these bearing retainers a light coat of grease and installing the bearings. You actually do use the stock bearings. It does not come with new bearings in this kit. Sorry, it's off camera. But yeah, you're just going to push those stock bearings right into those outdrive pieces, and there you have it. With this car, you obviously want to make sure that you put the diff back in the correct fashion. You kind of can't screw that up because it's offset, but you could on the front on this car. The rear is pretty straightforward. Obviously, putting some grease on this pinion gear, the ring gear, this rear. I had the opportunity to change out the diff fluid, but I did not. At least not on the rear. And for this first part of the install, I did use the bearing shims. I'm sorry, the shims at first, but I found that I didn't actually need them. It didn't fit with the shims, and there you have it. It's all put together. sped ahead a little bit there. It took me a little while, I'll be honest. It was very tight fit and easy but tight, definitely. So now that I had it in there, it was time to put that rear clip back on. And I did run into a little bit of resistance while I was doing that. But first thing I was going to do was install the new rear hub. And here's a little shot of the two different hubs next to each other. You could see the VITIVON stuff has a much larger bearing and those extra tuning holes on the hub, which is nice if you are into that kind of thing. One thing I did have to do was hammer the little pin into the axle there. It was sticking out ever so much on one side and it wouldn't let me install it in the hub, so I had to kind of hammer it with a punch on 3 out of the 4 axles. So a little bit of quality control there to get it to work. But after I had all those in, pretty straightforward. This truck I find is very easy to work on, all things considered. And I did have one small issue in the back here with the hinge pin brace. The right side, it wasn't lining up perfectly, but all I had to do was flip it around and that made it work. So once I had flipped that, I could get both the screws in, and there you have it. Have both the rear hubs. You got the center diff housing installed with the new axles, and it looks great, man. Not only does it look great, but it should help keep this thing to be relatively bulletproof, as that is one of the major areas this truck has issues when you're bashing with it. So next thing I was going to install here is the steering rack, right? Moving from rear forward, so you have to take these brace screws out, about 8 screws, and that steering rack pops right out of there. You can see the little brass bushings coming out there on the right hand side of the truck, and the new ones going in. So we got bearings in this as opposed to bushings. Not that the bushings are bad, they do their job pretty well, but the bearings are a little smoother and very nice. Obviously the quality here, everything has to be machined to perfection. So that goes in very easily, putting those screws back in. Normally I would use my driver here, but sometimes I do prefer to use hand tools just to make sure everything goes in right. And there it is. Voila. Steering rack installed. Now I'm still working out a few of the details with the servo. My first drive, the truck was listing from one. I didn't have a lot of left-hand steering, so we'll figure that out in the future driving video. But the next thing I was going to do was that tower brace. That couldn't be any easier. Level 1 install here. Just remove a few screws and put that bumper brace right back on, and bam, that one's fixed. Doesn't get any easier than that, as you can see. It's much stronger than the plastic one that comes with the truck that tends to crack when you have front impacts. Next thing I was going to do was do the steering hubs here, the front hubs, and the blocks. And it's just a matter of taking them out and putting your new axles into there. They're both, all this VITIVON stuff is always labeled left and right, so it's not hard to do at all. You slide right back in, make sure you use your Loctite. Good amount of Loctite on there. There's some set screws in there that are important to Loctite. Here's a quick view of the new VITIVON parts compared to the stock. Again, you can see the larger bearing, the larger amount of steel that you have, and there's a nice install of that. Everything is very smooth. Pretty much a perfect fit across the board. Very nice. And there's the left side of the truck done, all complete, all parts installed. Took me a little while, I would say maybe an hour to do that, hour and a half, getting caught up a little bit with that rear diff housing. The one major fit issue that I did see when installing this, as you can see there, is that on that steering link, as the shock compresses, it ends up binding right there. Binding, hitting it, and prevents the shock from compressing fully. So my fix was to actually just grind that part down, as you can see. So I had to grind that little piece down so that it didn't hit the plastic end there. That could make that thing snap. It still hits a little bit, but not nearly as badly as it did. So keep an eye on that, especially VITIVON should know about that. That needs to get fixed. So there it is, all done. I also added a little bit of nice scale netting to the truck side there. You can get that on Amazon pretty cheap. And all in all, it looks pretty awesome. Can't wait to drive it, guys. Have a driving video coming real soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.